So welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So this is episode 115, which is a really great group chat that we just had with Roger Dickey, who's the CEO of Made Renovation. So Made Renovation is a marketplace for home renovation services that's starting with bathrooms first. They recently announced a $23 million Series A round from top investors like Founders Fund, Insight Partners, and more. So prior to Made Renovation, Roger was the co-founder and CEO of Gigster, and before that was a founder of Mafia Wars, which was notably acquired by Zynga. So this is a really great chat with Roger, where we got to learn more about his extensive operator experience, some key learnings, did a deep dive into Made Renovation as a marketplace, and also had a really great group Q&A. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So Roger, welcome to the group chat. Nina, you have quite the incredible background building startups. And, I'm also, I've been really interested to learn more about, what you're building now with Made Renovation. So I'm really excited to dive into things here with you today. Before we do, though, I think it might be great if we can start off by sharing a little bit more on your background, though, for those that don't know you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and great to be here. Thanks for having me, Mike. Let's see. So my background is engineering. Started coding at a pretty young age. I was like 8 years old. Got really into that. Did a lot around computer graphics and games. Started a gaming company after college and sold it to Zynga. That was around 2008. Got some great experience there, essentially founding around 8 different game titles at Zynga, including Mafia Wars, which did over 400 million in annual revenue, had probably 100 million users. It's an incredible experience seeing massive consumer scale. I stayed on through the IPO, left, started doing a little bit of angel investing. So that's kind of, it was one of the ways that I got to know other types of businesses outside of gaming, because I'd never been involved in anything outside of gaming. So I started going to YC demo days in 2010. I saw Airbnb pitch. I saw DoorDash pitch. Unfortunately, did not invest in those businesses. That would be great. Anyway, I saw a lot of really cool businesses go through, and I got to know marketplaces kind of through YC. And my next company that I started after Zynga was a company called Gigster. And we were a managed marketplace for software development. Raised a bunch of money from Andreessen Horowitz, Michael Jordan, the basketball player. Grew that to about 10% of the Fortune 500. Stayed on for about 5 or 6 years. We sold that to a private equity firm based in Austin, where I'm actually at right now. And then took about 6 months off and started Made Renovation, which is also a marketplace in its own way. So yeah, excited to talk about all that today.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite the incredible background. So thanks for sharing with us. So, going back to Gigster, though, could you maybe share a little bit more about, what you were working on and kind of building with it as a marketplace at the time?
Yeah, certainly. So we were, as a startup founder, you're often a customer of like a software development agency. Many of us on this call have probably hired developers online or hired agencies online. And I never really liked the experience. So my co-founder and I thought, how can we make that better? And, there's obviously a great product there for SMBs, and competing with like, the Upwork or Odesk or Elance of the world at the time. But there's also a great product there for enterprises. They have to work with, Accenture, Deloitte, these massive firms that, famously, I think Accenture charged the TSA like $1.5 million for that app with an arrow that would point people left or right. So we did a little viral thing after that where we're like, hey, we built that app in 30 minutes. But anyway, so it seemed like a area ripe for disruption. And our approach was to basically sell the customer a kind of a project and not time. So talk up front, get a line on what they want, and sell them a project-based fee. So we'll make your entire app for $15,000, for example. So that was one major piece of it, which is more customer friendly because you know up front what your costs are going to be. 2 was we had a highly curated marketplace, and everybody says that, but like we were literally getting our friends that worked at like SpaceX and Google and like Airbnb and Amazon. We were getting our friends on the service, and these are people that you really had no other way to hire anywhere else. Um, we really truly had some of the top software engineers in the world. We also, rather than giving you an individual person, we gave you a team. So it wasn't a marketplace of individuals. We were the marketplace orchestrator, and we would give you one product manager. We'd give you maybe two backend engineers, one front end engineer, and even a designer. So we gave you all the people you needed to get your complete project done. So kind of several marketplaces combined into one to deliver that final product. And the last part of it, I would say, is at the time, AI was having a renaissance as this kind of popular buzzword and term, and machine learning was starting to be a thing. And we had played around with a little bit of that. So we wanted to give our marketplace members kind of Iron Man suits, in a sense, is what we called it, where everybody in the marketplace had these augmented superhuman abilities where they could be better and make more money and do more for our customers. So we really believed in kind of using AI to augment these marketplace actors, which at the time I think was a little bit too early and we didn't fund it enough. But now you're seeing more and more companies like that. So yeah, a couple innovations were tied into it, but we were trying to, at a high level, just build a better software services marketplace.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and thanks for sharing more with us. So definitely, I remember seeing the Gigster, the name back in the day. So, kind of, I would say, like looking back now, what were some of the biggest challenges with it as a marketplace specifically, and then maybe, what are some of those kind of learnings that you've then taken with you to Made Renovation?
Yeah, good question. So I touched on a couple of the things we were doing, and I'll tell you which ones worked and didn't. So the whole idea of doing kind of project-based versus time-based was very challenging to make work. Customers would kind of hold us hostage, and if we were selling an app for $15,000, we would do our math on the back end to ensure we were going to make a profit. But then as we delivered that project, it was very hard in practice to make the margins work out because customers kind of wouldn't let us go. They keep asking for changes. We'd have to then go after the freelancers and make them do the changes. So project-based versus time-based was like probably the wrong idea, or at least we didn't figure out how to do it. I think we probably could have figured it out if we didn't focus on growth over proving the model and proving kind of the unit economics. But we immediately started growing before we really had the unit economics proven. So that was, yet another mistake. The kind of Iron Man suit AI augmentation thing didn't work. Part of it is our scope was too broad. So this is another thing with a marketplace is it's helpful to find a niche, especially if you're trying to build a management layer or any type of augmentation element to it. You want to be more narrow rather than broad. The more narrow you are, the more likely it is you can build meaningful technology and tools that actually like move the needle for a transaction. So we didn't manage to build any of the AI that we talked about and told investors we could build. And yeah, I think just in general, guidance I would give is sell time and not outcomes. If you're doing a services marketplace, and try to be more narrow or specialized.
Yeah, those are really great learnings. So yeah, thanks for sharing those with us. I know we have quite a few service marketplaces in here, so that'll be super helpful and probably prompt some questions when we get to the group Q&A. But on that too, so I think that's a kind of great transition into Made Renovation. So what was the founding story of Made Renovation?
Yeah, well, so I mentioned that my background was games, and I really enjoyed that, and it worked well. Built a business I was able to sell to Zynga. Had a great run at Zynga. Then I built these marketplace businesses. I built Gigster, and I invested in a few marketplace businesses, and kind of saw the challenges that went into those, and also just working B2B. I found that my true passion wasn't really delivering a B2B product as much as it was delivering a product B2C and getting to kind of work closely with my customers. So I wanted to get back to those roots and do something in consumer that was important to me. I got a small team together. We did a lot of research on different consumer areas that really hadn't been tackled. And I did want to do something that touched the real world as well, kind of moving atoms, not bits. I was interested in doing a marketplace again, as long as it was consumer. But I wasn't necessarily married to doing a marketplace. So we did a lot of research, looked at the top 5 consumer, areas of consumer expenditure. I think it's like education, healthcare, um, housing, transportation, and food. Um, and we kind of looked at all those and landed on housing as the one that interested us and that we thought was like less crowded and less disrupted by startups. So we landed on that. We also kind of looked at a lot of companies at the time we really admired. So we actually really admired Open Door at the time. We admired this company called Lambda School at the time. And we're like, okay, what if those two companies had a baby? And we actually did this thought exercise for a lot of combinations of companies. And what we landed on was this idea of doing kind of free home renovations for customers, and basically taking a cut of the value of the home, so that we could essentially get equity in all these homes across the U.S. So we ended up landing on that idea just through a very long, protracted brainstorming process. If any of you are in the ideation phase and you want to see the fruits of that labor, you're interested in seeing like the 200 or 300 ideas that we didn't pursue, I have those in a shareable Google Doc. I'm happy to send them your way. Would love to see someone build those. We had a lot of really good ones, but we could only pick one. So that's how we landed on it, and then kind of did some early testing, and looked pretty good.
Yeah, we might have to check out that Google Doc. I'm sure there's some good ones on there. So, so going back to the very beginning, what were the actual first steps that you took to start it as a marketplace?
Well, so for starters, we saw, there were a few dynamics that we liked about the home renovation space. So we liked that there's growing demand. The market grew 19% last year. Okay, like how many markets that are already $160 billion markets are growing by 19%. And now it's like from 160 to 190 something. So it's around $200 billion. So we loved that the demand was growing rapidly, but also supply is scarce. General contractors are aging out. Most of them are a lot of them are over 55. That the number that are over 55 is growing rapidly. So we liked a lot of those dynamics, and we realized, okay, well, if supply is scarce, we should get to know our supply really well and ensure that we're serving our supply well and we're building them a great product for them. And if we can aggregate all the supply into one place, then the demand will come. So that was the early thesis. So to your question on what do we do first, I talked to 50 general contractors, just got on the phone with as many as I possibly could. I emailed all my friends that I knew had done a renovation recently, asked for an introduction to their general contractor, just started cold contacting people on like Yelp and Angie's List and stuff like that. And it was really illuminating. Learned a lot about that. I would say the other thing we did was a pricing study, because like Made Renovation, like Gigster, at Made, we wanted to offer a guaranteed price for the construction. And this is you might be saying like, well, didn't I learn my own lesson because that didn't work super well at Gigster? Well, home renovation is different because you almost always sign a fixed price agreement with a general contractor. Like if you're remodeling your bathroom, they'll tell you it's $12,000. You sign for that, and they have to do the work for $12,000, or they're like legally in trouble. So that is the standard of how that industry works. So we built some tools on top of that so that we could automatically produce, compute a price. And that was another thing we looked at doing. But once we kind of had general contractors interested, we recruited 5 to 10 general contractors. We had pricing figured out. We pretty much just built a front end for it and started buying Facebook ads. We got the whole thing done in about 6 weeks.
So before you really get into some of the specifics of it as a marketplace, I guess it might be helpful if you can give us an overview of Made Renovation and kind of where you're at today.
Yeah, for sure. Made is so to zoom out, like what are we delivering, right? We're delivering a home renovation, and it's vertical. So we only do bathrooms. We don't do kitchens. We don't do your skylight. We're not going to move a wall. We're not going to build a fence. Like, we're very vertically focused. That was a lesson from Gigster, again, to focus on a niche and really to own and dominate that niche. So all we do is bathrooms, but a bathroom renovation it's a complex multi-month process that involves multiple actors. So It's not the case where like one person can just remodel your whole bathroom. Like you're going to see a lot of different people get involved: designer, architect, maybe a permit specialist or expediter. Um, you have obviously the general contractor themselves, maybe a project manager, maybe a support person in case something goes wrong. So you've got, up to 7 or 8 different people that could be involved in a renovation. So you might be seeing where this goes, like similar to how Gigster was this multi-sided marketplace where we had designers, product managers, and engineers collaborating to build end projects for customers. We very much were just doing Gigster for home renovation because my thesis was that the Gigster model actually could work. It's a complex, multi-sided marketplace, and I thought it could work for home renovation, even if it didn't work super well for software services. So what we are, as a marketplace, as a company, is we think of us as an e-commerce solution for, renovation products and materials. So, we sell toilets, vanities, tile, faucets, shower fixtures, everything you need for a bathroom. We have thousands of SKUs in our catalog, organized into templates. So think of us as like an advanced kind of e-commerce solution for home renovation products. And attached to that e-commerce solution, kind of like imagine like the udders of a cow or something. Attached to those are these marketplaces. So we've got, designer, architect, the permit expediter, the builder. And there's a support layer that streamlines the whole experience. Support, Airbnb has support, Uber has support. It's hard to get away from that. So that's kind of always going to be there. But the marketplaces, we very much take ourselves out of the picture. We let the customer work in sequence with those different marketplace actors, and they buy the materials through our e-commerce experience. An analogy somebody mentioned to me is the idea of like, it's kind of like weddings in a way, where with a wedding you need the cake and you need the you need like the cake and the venue and invitations, and there's all these different things you need just to get a wedding put together. Well, it's and there are people that have tried to build like these multi-sided marketplaces for weddings. Well, it's similar to that, but for a home renovation.
It's really great to learn a little bit more about it. So I guess like on the level of kind of of management, when you kind of I guess when you reference like managed marketplaces, would you kind of put it at like that kind of more of the more managed? Or
I would, although like I have some caveats I can share with the group about that. I mean, I think like today we do a lot of handholding to like move the customer from stage to stage and make sure that the individual like kind of marketplace actors are doing their job. Because at the end of the day, the way we originally were selling this, we were taking full responsibility for the project, like going perfectly. If anything went wrong, like for example, we have a marketplace of designers who will design the customer's bathroom, and the designer then like produces the material list of items that need to be ordered. These designers get paid $700 per bathroom they design. And we have like a light QA process, but we don't always catch everything. So what happened is we pay them $700. We might QA it, we might miss something. Then it gets into build, and the builder's like, hey, you forgot to order like this entire thing. Or you ordered the wrong item and the designer actually messed up. Well, now we at Made Renovation, we have to go order the right item. We have to pay the builder because the project's taking longer. So essentially any link in the chain that breaks, we took full responsibility. And the marketplace actors weren't always like incentivized or even required to do things right, and they weren't always penalized when they didn't. So now we're evolving this model, and now we're moving to a less managed marketplace where we tell our customers, hey, you can pick a general contractor. Good luck. Like we're going to charge you a fee to match with them, but good luck. Like we're not in the middle of that transaction at all. And by the way, if like you didn't get one of your materials in design, go buy it at Home Depot. Like, get in your car and go buy it. Like we're not going to like go back and do it. So there's a shift in the model to less managed and more of a technology solution, leaning more heavily into kind of like the e-commerce technology flow, and less into us kind of babysitting every step of the process.
Yeah, I'm also curious to learn a little bit more about, how I guess like how standard are the offerings, right? So if I have a condo, for instance, and I'm looking to renovate my bathroom versus, like a larger, home, how I guess like how different could those look?
So we have we have 40 design templates that fit a range of styles, from kind of what you might call traditional to contemporary to, we have some like eclectic looking styles that have cool, funky wallpaper. So we've got a range of templates, and those templates each fit a range of bathroom sizes. So for any template, you can fit it into a powder room, anywhere up to a full primary bathroom. So, that's how that works. We're looking at adding even more range, so that, let's say, Home Depot, for example, wants to partner with us and put us on their website. Well, we could filter just for the templates that only have Home Depot materials. Or let's say you're based in Arizona, and you want a cool Southwest style bathroom. We could show you only templates that are regional. Or let's say an influencer wants to design a bathroom and put it up on maderenovation.com. They can do that, and they can get a kickback, or they can get essentially a commission whenever one of their designed bathrooms is sold. And they can use our design tools to just design a bathroom, create a template, put it up, and they can promote it through their social media channels. So, long answer to your question on design, but there's a lot of vectors to come at a design from. And we've already started to tackle a few of those.
And then also too, on that note, you did mention locations or kind of markets, right? Like Arizona versus kind of like New York City. So how many markets do you operate in today?
We're in 5 markets today: San Francisco, Seattle, Austin, LA, and now DC.
Yeah, and then I guess with you mentioned so many people can kind of be involved in the process of a renovation. So like 7 or 8, for instance, with one of the examples. So what kind of goes into to launching in a new market, and maybe kind of building that supply and demand?
It's fairly straightforward. So it used to be we actually needed a warehouse in every market, because we took care of logistics for the customer. We'd ship all the materials to our warehouse. We'd wait till they were all there. And once they were all there, we would schedule the builder. The builder shows up at the customer's house. The materials show up. Builder builds the bathroom. Everything's good. The homeowner doesn't have materials sitting in their house or their garage for 2 or 3 months. We're now moving away from that, at least moving away from that being a requirement. Because today we have our own warehouses, we have our own trucks. It's just a lot to manage. We have a lot of moving parts in this business, which means as a founder, if you start a business that has this many moving parts, you basically need 8 CEOs at your company. So, it's impossible for you to do it all yourself. You're going to have to be able to hire a lot of really strong leaders. If you don't, you're going to struggle and drown, and you won't be able to actually succeed at what you're trying to do. So I've found that we have to hire a lot of leaders who are very strong at what they do. But anyway, so logistics was a constraint. And then also we need to recruit local general contractors. Other than that, everything's centralized. Designs, material ordering, procurement, and permits can be custom by location, but we can also just make general contractors do that. So we now have a much lighter model where we can launch a market for, I don't know, $50,000 to $100,000, and we're pretty much ready to go.
Yeah, you weren't joking when you said moving atoms and bits earlier then. So I didn't realize that you had warehouses and logistics and whatnot also.
Yep, moving literal atoms.
Yeah. So on the note about the team, what is the team like today?
We've got a range of people. So full-time employees, we obviously have a large engineering team. We have a we have a G&A group. We've got the way to think of it, I'd say, is in 4 pieces. So we obviously have G&A, finance and HR and stuff like that. We've got a technology team, which is product, engineering, data. We have an operations group, which handles basically, once a project is sold, they handle delivering it from A to Z. So that's all the steps that I mentioned, and all the marketplaces that we have are managed by that group. So the head of our design marketplace would be under operations. The head of our build marketplace would be under operations. The head of our architecture marketplace is under operations. And then all of our QA is under operations. And then project management and support, that's all under operations. So the whole management layer on top of the marketplace is basically sitting in the operations team. And then there's a growth team as well. So marketing, sales, partnerships, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess how critical when it comes to growth would you say are partnerships kind of within the industry?
Challenge with our product is it's pretty high AOV, and it's a very low frequency purchase. Um, so when you have something that's high AOV and low frequency, like you have to try to find this needle in a haystack. Like you need to find like a customer willing to pay like $30,000 to $40,000, and you need to find them like the once in 10 years that they need your product. This is not an easy thing to do. Like, if you take away one or two things from this call, that should be one of the ones that you take away. If you're working on something very high AOV and very low frequency, don't try to sell it directly to consumer. Go through partners. If I could go back and restart this company over again, I never would have gone direct to consumer. It's a huge pain in the ass, extremely expensive. We spend like $5,000 or $6,000 to acquire customers. Maybe more, depends on the market, depends on the maturity of the market, depends on a variety of factors, but it's extremely expensive to just brute force it on Facebook and buy like, 20,000 ads to get one person to use your product. Partners, on the other hand, know when a customer is moving. For example, US Postal Service knows if someone changes their address, partner with them, get them to sell you leads, stuff like that. Like that's the way that we're starting to think more. And I wish we had that psychology earlier on.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the point about some of the challenges with lower frequency marketplaces and a higher AOV. So that was on my talking notes. So I'm kind of curious. So you did kind of mention it's kind of being the focus being so vertical, right, and so specific as far as bathroom renovations, which then sounds like such a big market opportunity. But what does the future of Made Renovation kind of look like, say 5-10 years from now?
So our 10-year plan is to remodel 1 million rooms a year. And we essentially want any homeowner to be able to visit our website, push a button, and remodel any room in their home. And room is the term we use broadly, for vertical, right? So for example, there's a company that does fence remodeling. Push a button, remodel your fence. There's a company that does yard remodeling called YardZen. Push a button, remodel your yard. These are all great businesses. Eventually, we'd like to buy, build, or partner with all of those, and be the one-stop shop for any home improvement that you'd like to do. We've already had conversations with some of those. We don't have time to do these verticals now. I mean, it's going to take us time to launch these. It took us time to launch bathrooms, and it's been a wrestling match just to get that right. But next year, we'd like to launch our next vertical. We're thinking kitchens. But there's other ideas there. So I think it's like the future looks like expand until we hit every vertical, expand until we hit every market. And then I think there's a third dimension of expansion, which you could think of as as how we reach the customer. So today it's like very D2C, but another whole dimension would be selling through local designers, selling through a local architect, selling through a builder. So if I'm a customer and I find a builder, can that builder use Made Renovations tools to complete the project? So right now you can't, that's not how it works. The builder can't use our tools. Like we have to use our tools. They're not productized. So that's, I would say, another dimension. And if we can do even 10% of what I said, we're worth at least $1 billion.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like such a huge opportunity and market. So yeah, I mean, what do you see as I'm just kind of curious, what do you see as some of the kind of challenges though, as you scale when it comes to operating it as a marketplace, maybe specifically?
We're not supply constrained right now. We haven't seen that as kind of a scaling challenge. We're not supply constrained because we're so bad at demand. We're so bad at like marketing and, a lot of the challenges I mentioned earlier around going direct to consumer. But I think it should be supply constrained. And that's what I explained at the outset of the call. Like, builders are getting older. We're also, this country has terrible immigration policy. So a lot of great like Mexican, Irish, Persian immigrants that want to come in and are actually like incredible trades workers and craftspeople. Like we don't want to let them in the country because we're xenophobic, right? So, you've got these immigration issues where like we could actually, I think it's like if Americans don't want to get into construction and the trades, and we're not letting people in, then the supply is eventually just going to dry up entirely. So that will be a problem down the road, and I think we will have to as a business, I think we're going to have to step into that area, potentially start our own trade schools, lobby for immigration reform. Like we're eventually going to have to do that, but that's like 5 to 10 years down the road. Now the problem is like we're still soaking up like all the builders in the markets that we're in, and we've got a long way to go for that, and we need to solve some of these demand challenges. So that's, I think, more where we're constrained, and that's like that and kind of nailing our model is probably the bigger focus.
Yeah, those are kind of interesting dynamics there. So one thing I did also want to kind of get into is your recent Series A, which congrats on that, by the way. So you have some pretty awesome investors that you have on board, like Insight Partners and Founders Fund. So could you maybe share a little bit more about what the fundraising journey has been like?
Yeah, I think as a business we're extremely attractive in some ways, or extremely unattractive in other ways. So it's kind of this like, there's just cognitive dissonance when you talk to an investor and they're like, like I've got this like, cool experienced founder, massive market, cool product, like clear pain point, like, and everybody I know would use this, an obvious product market fit. However, like, low frequency, high CAC, operational, like super risky business. And it seems risky to them because we're dealing directly with contractors in the build. So, it really like what we found. So one of the rounds we did, we talked to something like 30 venture firms, and out of the 30, 15 of them just like didn't even engage. Like they saw what we were doing. They wouldn't even take a pitch meeting because they're like, oh, I don't do home improvement. I don't do construction. I don't do low frequency. I don't do high OV, like whatever it was. They just wouldn't even take a meeting. The other 15, maybe 10 of them we pitched, and then they just like walked away because they saw like anything complicated they saw about it. They're like, yeah, that's too much for me. I can't really handle this. And then maybe there were 5 or so left that actually liked kind of what we were doing, and had the stones to like take a look at it and like consider investing, and like saw the market for what it is. And they knew it'd be a bumpy road, but they're like, we believe in this. They had the vision. And then of those, like maybe some of them didn't like the numbers, and we got term sheets from others. So like the guidance I would give, if you're in a business anywhere like mine, is just cast the net super wide, because some of the best fundraising advice I've gotten is that there's investors that will just like what you do, and there's investors that won't. It's like dating. If you date somebody and they break up with you, it's not because you're a bad person. Like you're fine. It's not the right fit. And I think people don't view investing that way. They view it like getting a grade in school. It's like, did I get an A or a B? Like I remember when we raised our Series A for Gigster, we were pitching these like tier 3 VC firms, like with just weird sounding names and crappy dingy offices, and like they'd pass on us. They just sit back in a chair and be like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work. And then we pitched Andreessen Horowitz, and Mark Andreessen like stood up, got out of his chair, and like I didn't even have to talk anymore. He told the whole room, like he answering questions for me about the business. He called me 30 minutes later with a term sheet. And then like all these other amazing firms invested as well. So sometimes like a tier 1 investor who's just like smarter and better and like more like risk on than like a tier 3. Sometimes like a tier 1 will get you and be more willing to invest than a tier 3. It's not a strict ranking of like, if your startup isn't good, you're not going to get any, you're not going to get any tier 1s or 2s, but you'll get a tier 3. It's pretty random. So you do have to like, get an understanding of who the investors are, cast the net wide, find the people that actually like you and actually like what you're doing, and then some subset of them will be willing to write a check.
Yeah, it's a really cool story also. So I do want to dig in this a little bit more because we have a lot of, I say other kind of like vertical marketplaces within the community here. And one of the things, that they also bring up a lot is as far as when it comes to fundraising is a TAM, right? And so how have you kind of, I would say, have you really helped some investors kind of visualize this not being such like a niche kind of market and such a large opportunity, and kind of finding that like founder investor kind of fit?
Well, bathrooms are not such a niche market. Bathroom renovations is an $80 billion market. It's larger than food delivery. It's larger than ride sharing. So we actually have a larger market opportunity than Uber did, larger market opportunity than DoorDash, probably larger than Instacart on grocery delivery. So there's no reason we can't be a $10 billion company on just bathrooms, which is kind of insane. Also, VCs love niches. They love like undiscovered, unexplored large niches. It's way more fun. If I'm a VC, it's way more fun and more sexy for me to go tell my friends, I just invested in a bathroom renovation company. And they're like, what? Tell me more. Versus I invested in a home renovation company. It's like yawn, boring. Like everybody's going after that. What's the cool angle? But when you're in a niche, it's automatically kind of a cool angle, and people will respect you more for it and they're more interested. So, I mean, the sweet spot is to find a large niche like bathrooms. Like that's a very attractive market to investors. If you're in a small niche within a larger market, that's okay too. I mean, even getting into a $1 billion market, let alone forget 80, let's say it's 1 billion or 8 billion or whatever. If you can get in and like build a big business in that market, then you'll build strength and capital and a team and everything, and you can go take another niche, and then another niche, right? Like Peter Thiel always says, like you want to build a large monopoly, a large monopoly is just a lot of small monopolies kind of glued together. So small markets are okay, but it needs to be within a larger market, and you need to show traction in that small market to be attractive.
That's really great. So I feel like you and I could go on for quite some time here. So we're going to make sure we can call on some of the founders that have some questions for the Q&A. Hey, Olivia, do you want to come on?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for the chat today. This is super interesting. I'm learning a ton. So, thanks so much for sharing your insights. I wanted to ask a couple of questions around supply. So you mentioned that, right now you're not supply constrained, but I was wondering, when you're thinking about, the markets that you're in currently or opening up a new market, like how do you think through those supply dynamics? So like how many suppliers, you would need to open up a city? And then what are the considerations that you think through with that? Like, is it the amount of time that a supplier might travel, like the range that they might travel? I mean, like in between people's homes, like the time that it would take them to complete a project. Like, can you walk us through some of those dynamics when you think about, the number of suppliers that you would need per city, and then also kind of like what factors go into that equation?
We're a little fortunate as a business in the sense that, like, a home renovation is a 3-month project. So, 3 to 6 to 9, depending on what you're doing in supply chain limits, but it's at least 3. And the first month of that is just design and getting your materials ordered. The second month of that is waiting for the materials to arrive. And maybe the third month is construction. And that's very simplified. That's if everything goes perfectly according to plan. So we have 2 months to match you with a contractor. So we've actually launched markets before where we kind of are like, we build the parachute after we jump out of the plane type of thing, where we'll actually just start selling, and then we'll go recruit general contractors for the projects that we've sold in the areas that we sold them. So that is a trick you can sometimes use. I mean, many of your businesses probably won't work that way. You probably don't have 2 months to wait after you sell to a customer. You probably have to match someone immediately. So it's a little bit different of a dynamic from our side. But yeah, I mean, when we're doing forecasting there, we look at, where the valuable homes are, because we want to sell initially to people with homes that are worth like north of, let's say, $1.5 million. We want to capture that whole market. Like I said, go build monopoly by monopoly. We want to capture kind of the upper mid-range market, and then go from there to the mid-range, and then go from there to lower mid-range, and then go from there to like lower. We never want to really do like top end stuff, because those people are insanely picky. But we want to kind of start upper mid-range and go down. So yeah, like we'll look at like, where's the concentration of valuable homes? Let me like find a bunch of builders. We have a team in the Philippines that's just like researching builders. Then we have a team in Mexico that calls those builders and like sees if they're interested in our model. And they pick some subset of the ones the Philippines team serves up. And then the Mexico team will serve up some to the US team, and the US team will pick like some subset of those and do deeper partnership conversations and like go meet them in person and grab coffee. So for us, I mean, we're looking at building deep partnerships with our supply. Like we're partnering with businesses. We're more like Instacart or DoorDash, like partnering with a restaurant or a grocery store. So these are B2B partnerships. They're not B2C like you'd see in like Uber, like when Uber partners with like a driver, right? So there's a little bit more consideration that goes into them. But yeah, I mean, to your point, we do think about some of those dynamics. Like I had this idea to do like an Uber pool type model where, you know, you give a general contractor a package of projects. Like to use the San Francisco Bay Area as an example, I might have 5 projects in Oakland. I could give all those 5 projects to one general contractor, and then their truck doesn't have to drive in circles all over the Bay. They can just do those 5 projects in Oakland, and it's more efficient. So we have looked at that, but we don't necessarily have the liquidity yet to like really get that humming and really have that like save us a lot of money. So, you know, in our case, like we haven't had to get super kind of analytical about that yet. But I think if you're higher scale and if you're B2C, I could see that more strategy is warranted. I guess the short answer I'd give you on that is to just like, you know, recognize that it's okay to get it wrong the first time and optimize later.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you.
This is a great question. Hey, Justin, do you want to come on?
Yeah, I'd love to. I had a question, and thanks, Roger, for everything you're explaining here. With the marketing stuff, going direct to consumer is definitely difficult, and the demand gen is something I think we all kind of struggle with. I'm curious, like, when you're thinking about partnerships and the demographic of customer to go after, you mentioned you don't want to be priced, you know, too high where people just don't care about money, but you also don't want to be too low, and there's kind of a sweet spot, it sounds like. So I was curious if you've done anything like partner with Zillow to see who has like as is this house just got sold as is or whatever, you know. Like, how do you think about like where's the sweet spot targeting strategy for people that have the money to spend on a renovation, but they're not, you know, just like oblivious or don't care about how much they're spending, and like finding them and targeting them? Because it sounds like, you know, with that super high cost of customer acquisition, that's going to be something that you're thinking about a lot.
I mean, you'd think it should be. We have, you know, I kind of mentioned you need 8 CEOs to run a business like mine. Well, I don't think we have like a CEO there yet. You know, we have a bit of a more junior growth team. And I've had to babysit a lot while also like raising money and like dealing with other parts of the business. So I think growth is an area where we have a lot of ideas like that kind of written down, but we don't have people to manage those and run those. I actually need to grow the growth team a lot, and I need to bring on more kind of heavy hitters who can take and own projects like that. Kind of like a growth product manager, someone who can take a business objective like that. Like how do we target people that are the most likely customers? They can take that problem statement and translate that into a solution, and translate that solution into action, and translate that action into like meaningful impact and results on the business. So I would say we have ideas like that. We haven't pursued a lot of them, but there are a lot of things we can do like that. We have done some targeting, like we bought some research on home values, on like when homes were purchased, on homeowner income levels. We've correlated that together. We've sent, you know, mailers to people's homes. We've even done like door-to-door sales in like affluent neighborhoods. We've kind of done these little tests. I wouldn't say though we've like necessarily gotten to like minimum viable results on some of the tests, and now we don't have bandwidth really to pursue those at this exact moment. So yeah, it's a tactical consideration with us, but something I would certainly recommend, you know, other startups to do. What I would say about go-to-market and an error we made is like, it's something you really have to focus on getting right. Don't grow before you like know how to grow. Like we got on this treadmill of like trying to raise a bunch of VC rounds early and poured Facebook dollars into marketing to kind of arbitrage that into like higher valuations for later rounds, which is a thing that like startups tend to do. And that was wrong, because now we're stuck in a place where like we have to nail that growth challenge. And if we had just gone a lot slower at first and like really figured out growth, like it would have been a much slower start, but we'd be in a much healthier place now.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I feel like that's kind of what we're going through right now, is like trying to place the bets and figure out the growth channels that we can double down on more and solve that problem. So it's good to hear. And you've walked the road, and I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say take your time. Like, don't feel like you have to solve it tomorrow. Don't kick it out the door before it's ready. Just get it right. You'll thank yourself later.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Awesome. I think we have actually another kind of question that's somewhat related to that, but back to the Gigster days. So hey Val, did you want to come on?
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, Roger. Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's a bit of an egotistical one. I'm with a talent marketplace called U-Team. I see Ilya with Van Hack here as well. You mentioned the issue with low frequency of transactions and high ACV. It's a problem that talent marketplaces that aren't gig focused experience as well. And it feels like Gigster, the later stage Gigster, might have experienced the same problem. Did you guys manage to solve it? Was it the key problem, or is it like a completely am I off with trying to formulate a problem for this type of a marketplace?
You're asking, did Gigster see the kind of high AOV, low frequency customer acquisition problems as well?
Yeah, and yeah, did you figure out how to solve it with partnerships? For example, you mentioned Made Renovation is solving it with partnerships right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the billion-dollar question, really, in that space, because it's such a commodity to do, I mean, I don't know about your business, the details of it, but 99.9999% of these are exactly the same. You go to the website, it's like hire top 3%, top 1%, top 2% developers. It's just a pretty front end and a bunch of developers out in Eastern Europe or Venezuela or whatever doing the work. There's a trillion of those, and there's no differentiation. And like, you have to think extremely hard about what you're doing that's different. Otherwise, it's just going to be a hand-to-hand combat slog to get every single customer, because you're fighting with everybody else that looks exactly the same to the end user for it. And like, best case for you is a race to the bottom, where you're like lowering your rates until your margins are razor thin just to get customers. Worst case is like nobody notices you or cares that you exist because you're not special, right? And you're not differentiated. So it's a pretty tough market to be in. Partnerships don't work, in my experience, for software services, because of differentiation. Because it's like, why should somebody partner with you versus somebody else? You have the same race to the bottom problem with a partnership. It's like, if I have a bunch of SMB owners, like, why should I refer your product versus a different product? Then it's like, who's going to pony up the highest referral rate? It's just, I mean, you can see where that road ends, so just don't even walk down it. So partnerships, I mean, we tried that and it just didn't really work. The only solution, so you have to get your CAC, you basically have to get your CAC low to succeed. And the best company in this space is TopTal that I can think of. I mean, I guess there's two ends of the spectrum. There's like Accenture that's like 40, 50 years old. And there's even the expression like nobody ever got fired for like hiring Accenture. So like, you have like some brand. So if you could just snap your fingers and have a brand that's like 40 years old that every Fortune 500 exec works, that's one way to do it, which is impossible. The other way is to do what TopTal did. TopTal is super, like, their superpower is one thing and one thing only, and that's SEO. They're just like, early on, they had like a 20-person SEO team of like some of the smartest people like you've ever met in your life. Like, best out of the top 100 SEO people in the world, they had like 20 of them. Maybe out of the top 50, they had 20, or the top 25, they had 20. Like they had many of the top SEO people in the world. And I could talk for another whole hour about what they did and the tricks. But it's extremely hard, and you need like brilliant people, like physics PhDs, like you're talking like pretty complex stuff. But if you nail it, then you have just this infinite, unlimited stream of free customers, and you're worth $1 billion or more, like TopTal is. And then I'm sure there are other points on that spectrum. I'm just pointing to the two ends, but that's the best way I've seen it done, honestly, is SEO. Because if you're trying to buy ads or partnerships, harassing people with cold emails, I've never seen that work for software services. Nobody scales.
Thank you. Yeah. Makes sense. Thank you.
Awesome. That was a good question. Thanks for coming on, Val. So I know Roger, we had quite a few founders in here, that run talent and services marketplaces that wanted to come on. So glad we were able to get Val on. But we're almost out of time here, so I definitely want to be conscious of that. But definitely, this is a really fun chat, and so thanks for joining us here. It was great to dig into some of your past experience at Gigster, and then learn more about Made Renovation as a marketplace, which is really cool. I did actually have one last question for you that I want to wrap things up with, which is if you were to go right back before you started Gigster, what would you tell yourself specifically about marketplaces?
Tell myself a couple of things, and this will be rehashing a couple of points we already discussed. I would tell myself that a lightly managed marketplace is better than a managed marketplace. I would aim for. I certainly wouldn't sell kind of outcomes. I would sell time. I'd make sure I nailed the go-to-market. So we struggled with it at Gigster, to the last question. And there are ways to kind of power through, but it's very, very hard. So I'd really make sure that I nailed that. I would watch the unit economics extremely closely. So we kind of produced these optimistic looking unit economics reports and kind of ran the business off of those, and to an extent kind of had our head in the sand on like some of the core root problems with the model, until it was too late, or nearly too late, and then we had to do a turnaround. So I think just watching the economics very, very closely. You have to keep your core team very lean. So we thought we were going to do, I mentioned building like the Iron Man suits for our freelancers and doing all this AI. We thought we were going to do a lot of that. So we hired a ton of people, to build that tech, and it didn't work. And that, I'm talking like 30, 40, 50 people burning, highly paid people burning for 2 or 3 or 4 years on all that stuff. It adds up, and it eats up all the money that you raise. So the meta lesson there is, if you're going to take a swing, outside of just a basic marketplace with a landing page, if you're going to take any type of swing and build tools, make sure you do it right. Pick your battles very carefully. Don't release something until it's truly a minimum viable product. And the part people miss, at least the part I miss when it comes to building an MVP, is like, I'm very good at making something minimal. Making something viable is the other question. So if you have to err on one side or the other, make it viable, even if you go a little past minimal. I think we made a number of bets where we would put in about 80% of the investment we needed for it to work. And sometimes you put in 80% of the investment you need and you get 0% of the return for 80% input. So because the yield curve is S-shaped, and the S happens around 95 to 100% of the effort you should put in, and it's 0 up until that point. So you have to know where you are on the yield curve for different things you're doing, especially if these are like sidebar initiatives to your marketplace. Because those can be very expensive. It's like if you run a dev shop, and on the side you're trying to build your own products, which a lot of founders do. You got to be really careful what you build, because you're burning precious profits that you have. So I think those are a couple I would point to. A lot of lessons doing it when you're doing a complex marketplace. And I think, one of the biggest ones is just to keep it very simple and get it right before you scale it.
Such great parting advice for us and tips here. So I know you got a few head nods too throughout that. So Cool. Well, once again, we really appreciate it. And last but not least, just time for a quick plug. Where can we keep up with you at?
I'm on Twitter. So just my full name, twitter.com/my full name. That's a good place. My DMs are open there. I also run a small fund called Untitled Capital. So that's untitled.capital. I think there's a link to my email address there. So yeah, if I can help with something, feel free to get in touch.
Thanks again, Roger. This is really great. And thanks everyone for joining in and the great questions today.